guys get you're screwing things up for me. Go for
it. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We begin our service in which we celebrate both Shabbat and Yom HaAtzmaut on page 128 with Yedid Nefesh.
Turn to the top of page 124, 124 in Mishkan Tefillah, our prayer book in front of you or underneath you, and we read together. We enter the sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured. A beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayers. And it's our great honor to welcome the Harris family to the Bima as they light our Shabbat candles, 120. You four guys. We rise together for Kiddush 123.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'ratzon hinchayanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom d'chila lemichrae kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim Shabbat Kochechai Be'ahava Uvraton Hinchaltanu Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim.
Good, no more? Okay, good. We turn to page 127 at the top and we join together. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand and wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act and care nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. We continue with Psalm 95, 130.
Lechu neranen al Adonai, nariya.
We sing on 134, Zamru Ladonai Bechinor.
Name
pinnacle of Kabbalat Shabbat Lecha Dodi.
Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela yaidai dai Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela Shamor bezachor bedibur echad Ishmianu el ha-meyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shem u'tiferet v'litila Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela yaidai dai Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha Ki hi mekor haberacha Merosh mikedem nesucha Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tcheila Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela yaidai dai Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela Hitoreri hitoreri Ki ba'orech kumi ori uri uri shir daveri Kevod Adonai alayich nigla Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela yaidai dai Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela
We rise together to greet Shabbat HaMalkah.
Boi v'shalom ateret ba'alam Gam b'simcha uv'tzola Toch emunei am segulam Boi chala Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela yaidai dai Lechandodi likrat kala yaradai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela
The bottom page 145. Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, less routine set my ways. We continue with our Chetzi Kaddish right there, 144.
יתקדל ויתקדש שם רבם בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון וביומכון ובחי דכל בית ישראל בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב נאמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינסה ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל מלאכתם ושירתם. תושבחתם נחמתה תמירן בעלמם נאמרו אמן.
We rise together, 146. We continue the top of page 148.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvivuna meshana itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umsader et hachohavim, b'mishmeretem barakia kitzono, b'rei yom v'layla galei or minei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Uma'avir yom umevi laila. Umavdil bein yom umevi laila. Adonai tzvaot shemo el chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim.
Amen. Yasher koach. On the next page, our Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Ba'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Ba'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anuchi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha, vishinantam levanecha, vedibartam bam, bishivtecha, bevetecha, uleftecha, vaderech, ushuchbecha, uvkumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, vehayu letotafot beinenecha, uktavtam, amizuzot beitecha, uvisharecha, leman tiskeru v'azitem et kol mitzotai, v'hitem kedoshim le'elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lechem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Adonai Elohechem emet. Yasher Koach.
We turn to page 157 and we read together 157. Standing on the reported shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together, our song of freedom and redemption, our Micha Mocha 158. Top of page 161, and we read together. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will, our Hashkivenu 160. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable, without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. For those who are able, we rise for our tefillah 166.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. צומח נופלים ברופאי חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We jump ahead, we move to page 179, and we read together. 179. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. Make a temperate reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praise you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. 178.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
At this moment in our service, we take time to think of those who are in need of healing of body or spirit. We think of Lyndall Applebaum, Margaret Bell, Steph Brock, Harold Seitlin, Deborah Chargois, Orit Cohen, Karen Edwards, Edward Goldberg, Jeffrey Goldman, Sandra Goldman, Miriam Goldstein, Fran Curry Harrington, Josie Hatfield, Emily Held, Evelyn Held, Donald Himmel, Ralph Holtzman, Corey Kessler, Jerry Lapidus, Rush Lishkoff, Zane Mondlik, Marlene Meyerson, Malkabat Rachel, Susan Schumann, Leslie Simon, Chrissy St. Charles, Don St. Charles, Brenda Weinstein, Hunter Weidman, Kevin Woods, and Edgar Zimmerman. For those with us this evening, if you are thinking of a loved one, a friend, someone who means so much to you, we invite you to share that name as my eyes meet yours. For those names mentioned out loud, and for those names that are still in our hearts, we continue with our Misha Berach, the middle of page 371.
Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. In the spirit of Yom HaAtzmaut, we are going to have a bit of celebratory music in a little bit, but to get in the mood for it, we're going to open with Avinu Sheba Shamayim, a prayer for the state of Israel. Then we will have two wonderful speakers, our own rabbi and Dr. Ralph Seelig. And then, if you are comfortable, I know this might be a little unusual for our community, I would love for everybody to get up and do some dancing for part of maybe some hakafot with our Israeli flags, and there are shakers over here if you want them, and enjoy. Avinu, Avinu,
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yesterday, we filmed we screened, that is a proper production terminology, upheaval. It's the story of Menachem Begin, the great prime minister for the state of Israel. But in the opening scene, we learned where he came from in what would be Belarus. But the reason why I want to start in Belarus or in Eastern Europe, because this is where most of the heart of modern Zionism came from. So if we go 75 years before Begin in this area, 19th century Jews had to answer a question. Do they make the difficult trip to flee the Pale of Settlement and make it to the United States of America? And many of them share our story with our great-grandparents per se, or our parents. Some said, let us capitulate and become Soviets and just embrace something else. That's our only way to become free. Some had a different idea. And a young movement called itself Bilu, Beit Yaakov Elchu Menelcha, O House of Jacob, let us build up, with the idea that the only Jewish life that could be ever have, that could be successful, that could thrive, would be in our own indigenous homeland, Medidat Yisrael, the state of Israel. And as I said in my Yontif sermon, that the state of Israel is the greatest miracle that has ever happened for the Jewish people. Again, it is the greatest miracle that has ever happened for the Jewish people. If Rashi, if Maimonides, Nachmanides, all of our great rabbinic thinkers could see what the state of Israel is today, they would be in absolute shock, and this would be a miracle. And I'm proud to be here at Temple Emanu-El. It was Rabbi Grafman who took bold risks that ensured when Zionism wasn't fashionable or popular within the Reform movement, it was Rabbi Grafman who ensured that Temple Emanu-El would embrace Zionism and celebrate the state of Israel as the main refuge for the Jewish people. And based on this idea of building, we know all about Israelis' technology, their healthcare, their incredible military, their infrastructure, their startups. Everything of that should be celebrated. But tonight, I want to read a poem called Amal, written by Shalonsky. And it's going to set up the way into which Dr. Selig will speak about, and eventually it's going to be music. But these are the words with the themes of building up. And I want you to listen to the imagery that Abraham Shalonsky says. And here we go. Dress me, pious mother, in a glorious coat of many colors. And what does that remind you of? Joseph. And with dawn, lead me to toil. And the Hebrew word for toil is amal. My country wraps itself in light as in a talit, or prayer shawl. Houses stand out like tefillin. The highways that palms have paid glide down. Here, the beautiful town prays nations to its creator. Among the creators is your son Avraham, a hymn writer, a poet, but a road paver in Israel. So here is Shalonsky re-identifying what would be the new Jew. Someone who would work for his country, someone who would thrive for his country, to celebrate it, to create a new Jew that would no longer be sheep sent to the slaughterhouse. And this is such a main part of Israel's identity. And that's why in 1948, after the state of Israel established itself as its nation, all of the Middle Eastern countries, most of them expelled all of their Jews. And this came a bit of a conflict between the Sephardic, the Ashkenazi, the Mizrahim Jews in areas of education and school. But eventually they found together to become cohesive, and the majority of Israelis are from Middle Eastern countries, not Ashkenazic Jews today. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because in the realm of music and creating a national identity, music was foundation to the story of Israel. The Sephardic story, the Ashkenazim story, the Mizrahim story, and eventually these musical stories found its way to our country and into our shuls. So based on this idea of building up a nation, it had to come in many different sectors. And normally, I would speak about one of these sectors, but I'm not an expert in music, and that's why I'm so happy to have our dear friend, our musical scholar in residence, Dr. Seelig, and this is the last time that Ralph will be with us. In a couple weeks, he's off to, I want to say, a real rigorous rabbinical school, Abraham Geiger College in Berlin, training the future rabbis in Europe. Thank you. The calm is yours.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. What a difference from last week as we celebrate the state of Israel. My remarks will be very short tonight because I would like, after I speak, you're going to think it's Simchat Torah, but we're going to ask that everybody will take a flag and we will do some Israeli music and walk around in the spirit of Yom Ha'atzmaut. My good friends, I have to look around the crowd and remind everybody, I'm sorry, you speak here, okay? Do we all remember what the British invasion was? What comes to mind when we talk about the British invasion? The Beatles, right? Oh, everybody can laugh. The Monkees, Petula Clark. There was a whole influx of what they called the British invasion musically. But when we talk about the synagogue music, there was also a tremendous influx of Israeli music. And does anybody know why? What do you think? Think of your children a moment, your grandchildren. Where did you send them in the summer? Camp. And how many of you sent your children or grandchildren to a Jewish day camp? Okay, quite a few. Okay. The melodies we do tonight aren't new for our Hakafah. We're going to be doing B'Shana Haba'ah, Sisu et Yerushalayim Giluvav, Shalom al Yisrael, David Melech Yisrael. We opened tonight with Yidit Nefesh, that was by Ehud and Sarah Zweig. Who were these people? Any idea? The number one Israeli piece of music we just did, it was written by a woman. Does anybody know who we're talking about? I'll give you a clue. Oseh Shalom. Nurit Hirsch. Nurit Hirsch was the Israeli Debbie Friedman. If you think about Debbie Friedman, everybody does her Havdalah, whether it's Reform, Conservative, or Orthodox. The Oseh Shalom, most people do in the Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox movement as well. And what was interesting was she was the first woman that really crossed all three sections of the population. As you can see, I can go on and on and on with this, but the reason I mentioned the day camps is that's really how it really infiltrated itself here, okay? With Camp Ramah, Nifty, the different day camps, Eisner, children started learning a lot of these Israeli songs. And they became also very popular slowly but surely in the synagogue movement. So when we talk about Israeli music today in the synagogues, how much of Israeli influence is in that synagogue music? And if you think about some of the melodies we did tonight, the Lechadodi, that was done in the Jerusalem synagogue. I'm just looking down the program that we did tonight. The Oseh Shalom from Nurit Hirsch. We're going to do now a few pieces. The Shalom al Yisrael was by Effie Nesser, who was really a rock and roller. The Tzvika Pick, the Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, was also, I'm sorry to tell you, a rock and roller who actually brought some of the music into the synagogue. Like I said, I want to keep my remarks really brief. Maybe someday we'll have a small little lecture on our Havdalah service, talk a little bit more about our Israeli melodies. But what I'd really like you to do, please don't be shy, don't be embarrassed. We'd like everybody to take a flag, and we'd like to do a hakafah. Please take one, because it gives me a good excuse to slowly walk back upstairs. Shabbat Shalom. It's the kid to lead. Ready to go? All right. One.
Let's do it. בשנה הבאה נשב אל המרפסת ורוחות ציפורים נודדות, ילדים בחופשה ישחקו תופסת בין הבית לבין השדות. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. ענבים אדומים יבשילו עד הערב ויוגשו צוננים לשולחן. ברוחות רדומים ייסעו עליהם הדרך, עיתונים ישנים כנדן. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. בשנה הבאה נפרוס כפות ידיים מול האור הניגר הלבן. הנפה לפתה תפרוס באור כנפיים והשמש תזרח לטובן. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. ורוחים בלב שמח, ורוחים בלב שמח, ורוחים בלב שמח, ורוחים בלב שמח. אמבה נגילה, אמבה נגילה, אמבה נגילה ונשמחה. אמבה נגילה, אמבה נגילה, אמבה נגילה ונשמחה. אמבה נרננה, אמבה נרננה, אמבה נרננה ונשמחה. אמבה נרננה, אמבה נרננה, אמבה נרננה ונשמחה. עם ישראל חי, 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 עם ישראל חי. עוד אמינו, עוד אמינו, עוד אמינו חי. עוד אמינו, עוד אמינו, עוד אמינו חי. עוד אמינו, עוד אמינו, עוד אמינו חי. עוד אמינו, עוד אמינו חי. עם ישראל חי, עם ישראל חי, עם ישראל חי. עם ישראל חי, עם ישראל חי, עם ישראל חי.
נפקדתי שומרים כל היום וכל הלילה על חומותייך עיר דוד נפקדתי שומרים כל היום וכל הלילה שישו את ירושלים גילובה גילובה כל אוהביה כל אוהביה שישו את ירושלים גילובה גילובה כל אוהביה. Two more. You can sit down if you're ready. הדליקו אור ברחובות ושיר זמרו בעיר מחר על פני כל התקוות יפציע יום בהיר משובחים יגביה אז ריבו יונה לבן בשמש נקייה מפס תקרא מתוך ענן שלום 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 על ישראל אמרו שירי הלל שלום על ישראל שלום 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 על ישראל אמרו שירי הלל שלום על ישראל. We got one more selection for you. This one was not a dance number, so I'm glad you made your way back to your seats. We are, if you want to follow along with the words, on page 660. This is Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. Amir harim salul kayayim mereach oranim nisa beruach arba'im im kol pa'amonim uftar lemati lan baden shvuya b'chaloma העיר אשר בדד יושבת ובליבה חומה ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור חזרנו אל בורות המים לשוק ולכיכר שופר קורא בהר הבית בעיר העתיקה ובמרות אשר בסלע אלפי שמשות צורחות ושוב נרד אל ים המלח בדרך יריחו ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור.
As we take a few paws from the Omer game, we still have to count it, and tonight is 21 days. Just out of curiosity, as we counted 14, and Belgium was the 14th country to recognize the state of Israel. Brazil was the 21st country to recognize the state of Israel, February 7th, 1949. And next week we'll continue with the third annual Omer game, and I think so many people are very excited for it. Oh, I see you. Okay. Please rise. Hold on, Ralph, we gotta count the Omer.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer.
Hayom echad ve'esrim yom shehem shlosha shavuot la'omer. Today is 21 days, which is 3 weeks of the Omer. Remain standing for Aleinu 586.
Aleinu leshameach ladon hakol לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם מגורלנו ככל המונם מה אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
On this Shabbat, we recall the yortzites of Rebecca O. Ayland, Jack Bass, Dorothy Berman, Louis Bernheim, Ernest Champion, Jay Cohen, Abraham Cohen, Esther Cohen, Gary Marshall Cohen, Winfield Scott Downs II, Rose B. Epstein, Samuel Ehrlich, Ethel Ayland Fleischer, Robert S. Friedman, Sally Friedman, Chester Goldberg, Rose Goldstein, Renee Heimson, Gwendolyn Hartman, Linda May Horwitz, Dr. Stanley Kahn, Max Kaplan, Clara E. Kaplan, Joseph Kushner, Richard Stephen Light, Bobby Solomon Moran, Robert J. Mishad, Karen Z. Mitnick, Emmanuel McGilner, Marvin Raymond Nelson, Rabbi Morris Newfield, Johnny Otis, Eugene Ofson, Jocks Posner, Colonel Norman Rabowski, Audrey Friedman Rich, Mary Sachs Rubin, Annie Rappaport Rosner, Bessie Berman Siegel, Evelyn Cooper Simon, Alan Solomon, Joel Spiegel, Joanne Reed Wright, and a heartfelt condolences in the recent passings of Judy Ayland, mother of James Allen Spector, grandmother of Dayton Lewis and Leon Ayland Spector, cousin of Dr. Jack Ayland, Robert Ayland, and Robert Levin, Kenny Hanley, friend of Ben Singletary, Ellen Kahn, mother of Elizabeth David, Esther Light, mother of Simona Herring, grandmother of Rose Herring Cobb, and Wesley Herring, great-grandmother of Sidney and Charlotte Cobb, Edgar Marks Sr., the father of Edgar Jr., Catherine Simon Marks, and grandfather of Edgar Marks III, Griffin Marks, and Samuel Marks, and Yaakov Steinman, father of Maria Bertrand. Our hearts go out to of the 3 Israelis who were murdered in last night's terrorist attack. We rise together as a united congregation, our Mortars Kaddish 598. Yikadal v'yikadah shemei Rabbah, v'yomad yivrach v'yoteh v'amlich malchuteh, v'chayachon v'yomechon, uv'chayet kol beit Yisrael, b'agalah v'zman kariv v'yimru.
Amen.
Yehei shmei Rabbah v'varach v'olam alamei almaya, yiparach v'hishabach v'yipra'ar v'yipromab v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei l'kudsha,
Brichu.
Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiram be'oma v'yimru.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, huya seh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen.
Amen.
Shalom b'imromav, uyaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, me'imeru, amen.
We remain standing for our final song, Israel's national anthem, Haktikva. For those who want to follow along, 678.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
B'te'avon.
It's all yours, the whole thing. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Please join us, and you can put the flags back in the box. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Summary of the day. Terribly soon.